The Milky Way galaxy had finally found a moment to breathe. With the Ori Crusade shattered and the Supergate permanently sealed, a newfound era of unprecedented cooperation blossomed across the stars. The Earth-led alliance, bolstered by the phenomenal industrial might of the Republic clone forces and the scientific brilliance of Starfleet, had established a fortress of peace. But in the Stargate universe, peace was often just a quiet prelude to another storm. The call for help did not come from their own stars, but from a galaxy 3 million light-years away. Atlantis was under siege. Dr. Elizabeth Weir's distress transmission from the Pegasus galaxy was frantic and stark. The Wraith, a vampiric, hive-based species that culled human worlds for sustenance, had awakened early. Worse, they had somehow acquired a new power source, allowing their massive organic hive ships to travel faster and coordinate a massive armada aimed directly at the ancient city of Atlantis. The Earth ship Daedalus was holding the line, but they were severely outgunned. Major General Landry did not hesitate. He looked to the commanders of the two most powerful warships in the known universe. Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise E and General Anakin Skywalker of the Republic Venator-class Star Destroyer Resolute both immediately agreed to answer the call. Getting to Pegasus had once taken Earth vessels nearly 3 weeks. But the combined engineering genius of Lieutenant Commander Data, Geordi LaForge, Colonel Samantha Carter, and the Republic's astromech droids had resulted in a technological miracle. They had successfully integrated the Asgard intergalactic hyperdrive technology with the Resolute's massive Class -1 hypermatter reactor and the Enterprise's warp core. The result was a slipstream conduit that allowed the two colossal vessels to cross the intergalactic void in mere days. When the Enterprise and the Resolute dropped out of slipstream space above the ocean world of Lantea, the visual was breathtaking. The magnificent, shimmering city of Atlantis floated on the azure waters below. But the space above the city was a chaotic battleground. 3 massive Wraith hive ships, each terrifyingly huge and resembling flying, spiked Gothic cathedrals grown from dark organic matter, were pummeling the city's defensive shield. Swarms of tiny Wraith darts buzzed around the Daedalus, which was valiantly returning fire with its railguns, its Asgard shields glowing a dangerous crimson under the sustained assault. Aboard the bridge of the Enterprise, Captain Picard took his command chair with calm authority, the tactical displays reflecting in his eyes. He noted immediately that the Wraith vessels possessed no energy shields, relying entirely on the incredibly dense, self-regenerating properties of their organic hulls. Picard ordered Commander Worf to lock phasers on the nearest hive ship's weapons clusters and prepare a full spread of quantum torpedoes. Simultaneously, aboard the Resolute, Anakin Skywalker felt a cold, alien hunger echoing through the Force. It was the collective consciousness of the Wraith, a predatory emptiness that sent a shiver down his spine. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood beside him, his expression grim, sensing the millions of lives these creatures had extinguished. Anakin didn't bother with a warning shot. He ordered Admiral Yularen to bring the Venator alongside the Enterprise, opening the ventral hangar doors to release the clone fighter squadrons, and commanded all heavy turbolaser batteries to fire at will. The Wraith commanders, accustomed to overwhelming their prey with sheer size and numbers, did not recognize the threat of the two new vessels until it was far too late. The Enterprise fired first. The Type 12 phasers, continuous beams of high-energy Nadian particles, struck the dark, fleshy hull of the lead hive ship. Without energy shields to dissipate the blast, the phasers sliced through the incredibly thick organic armor like a scalpel through tissue, boiling the biological matter instantly and severing massive power conduits. The hive ship shuddered violently, venting green atmospheric gases into the vacuum of space. Worf immediately followed up with 4 quantum torpedoes. The zero-point explosions detonated deep within the wounds the phasers had opened. The hive ship's regenerative capabilities were instantly overwhelmed by the sheer destructive yield. It fractured along its central axis and erupted in a spectacular, silent fireball. Aboard the Daedalus, Colonel John Shepard watched from the commander's chair in absolute awe. He keyed his radio, telling Atlantis Command that whatever cavalry Earth had found, he wanted to buy them a very large drink. The second hive ship turned its attention to the wedge-shaped behemoth of the Resolute. It unleashed a barrage of concentrated blue plasma bolts, the heavy artillery of the Wraith fleet. The plasma slammed against the Resolute's deflector shields, rippling the energy barrier, but the Republic shields, designed to withstand point-blank turbolaser broadsides from separatist dreadnoughts, barely flickered. Anakin ordered the return fire. The sheer volume of thermal and kinetic energy unleashed by a Venator-class Star Destroyer was staggering. Dozens of heavy turbolaser bolts, each carrying the explosive yield of a small tactical nuke, slammed into the unshielded side of the Wraith hive. The organic armor simply could not disperse the heat. Huge chunks of the Wraith vessel were vaporized on impact, the ship physically breaking apart under the relentless, hammering barrage. Realizing their capital ships were completely outmatched, the remaining Wraith hive launched thousands of darts. The incredibly fast, small fighters swarmed toward the Enterprise and the Resolute like a cloud of aggressive insects, their culling beams ready to beam the crews directly out of their ships. But the Wraith darts had never encountered Republic clone pilots led by a Jedi Knight. Anakin Skywalker launched in his yellow Jedi Interceptor, leading hundreds of ARC-170s and V-Wings into the fray. The space above Atlantis became a swirling vortex of dogfights. The darts were fast and numerous, but they were unshielded and relied on suicidal ramming tactics when cornered. The Republic fighters, heavily shielded and armed with proton torpedoes, tore through the Wraith formations. Anakin was a blur of motion, letting the Force guide his hands. He didn't even look at his targeting computer. He anticipated the darts, movements seconds before they made them, his laser cannons turning the alien fighters into expanding clouds of debris. When a squadron of darts attempted a kamikaze run on the Enterprise's bridge, Picard ordered evasive maneuvers, utilizing the impulse engines to pitch the massive saucer section downward. The darts missed, and the Enterprise's automated point defense phaser arrays swatted them out of the sky with pinpoint, terrifying accuracy. The third hive ship, heavily damaged and realizing that this prey had teeth that could shatter bone, initiated a hyperspace window and fled into the depths of the Pegasus galaxy, leaving its remaining fighters to die. The siege of Atlantis was broken in less than 20 minutes. The subsequent meeting in the Atlantis Gate room was a collision of cultures. John Shepard and Elizabeth Weir welcomed Picard, Data, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Captain Rex. Dr. Rodney McKay was immediately drawn to Lieutenant Commander Data, bombarding the android with frantic questions about his positronic brain. Matrix, to which Data responded with earnest, highly detailed, and completely overwhelming literalism. Geordi LaForge and McKay quickly formed a fast, if slightly competitive, friendship over the intricacies of ancient ZPM power distribution. However, the victory celebration was short-lived. The intelligence downloaded from the destroyed hive ships revealed a terrifying truth. The Wraith had not just awakened, they were uniting under a single, immensely powerful Supreme Queen. She had seized control of a derelict ancient cloning facility deep in the galaxy's core, using stolen ZPMs to power it. She was breeding a new army of millions of Wraith warriors and growing dozens of new hive ships. If left unchecked, the Wraith would not just consume Pegasus, they would eventually find a way to the Milky Way. The Alliance decided on a preemptive strike. There would be no hiding, no guerrilla warfare. They would take the fight directly to the heart of the Wraith war machine. The journey to the cloning facility was tense. Obi-Wan spent hours in the Enterprise's stellar cartography lab, meditating with Counselor Deanna Troi. Troi, an empath, could feel the psychic static of the Wraith echoing across the galaxy, a cold, terrifying hunger. Obi-Wan taught her Jedi-centering techniques to shield her mind from the oppressive weight of the Wraith's collective telepathy, finding a deep respect for the Betazoid's innate abilities. Anakin, meanwhile, paced the hangar bays of the Resolute alongside Captain Rex and Commander Worf. Worf had volunteered to lead a joint Starfleet clone ground assault team. The Klingon and the clone captain shared a mutual respect born of absolute martial discipline. Worf found the clone trooper's dedication to duty honorable, while Rex appreciated Worf's straightforward, uncompromising approach to combat. They agreed that phasers on stun would be useless against the regenerative properties of Wraith warriors. This would be a high-yield, lethal engagement. The Allied fleet, the Enterprise, the Resolute, and the Daedalus, dropped out of hyperspace over a dark, smog-choked planet. The ancient cloning facility was massive, sprawling across a continent, pulsing with organic Wraith technology grafted onto ancient architecture. In orbit, a defensive fleet of 7 hive ships and dozens of cruisers waited for them. The space battle was a spectacle of raw power. Picard coordinated the fleet, utilizing the Daedalus to screen the fighters while the Enterprise and the Resolute engaged the capital ships. The Enterprise danced through the void, its structural integrity field pushed to the limit as it absorbed plasma fire, returning devastating volleys of quantum torpedoes that shattered the unshielded Wraith cruisers. Anakin commanded the Resolute from the bridge, angling the massive warship to present its heavily armored ventral side to the enemy, allowing its broadside turbolasers to rake across the hive ships like a scythe through wheat. Under the cover of this orbital bombardment, the ground assault commenced. Transporters were useless through the incredibly dense electromagnetic interference of the cloning facility, so the Republic deployed lot gunships. They plunged through the atmosphere, dodging plasma anti-aircraft fire. The gunships slammed into the primary landing platforms of the facility, the doors sliding open to unleash chaos. Captain Rex and the 501st Legion poured out, their DC-15A blaster rifles illuminating the gloom with brilliant blue bolts. Worf and his Starfleet security teams flanked them, their phaser rifles set to maximum thermal disruption. The Wraith warriors, towering, pale, and monstrous, swarmed out of the facility's organic corridors. They charged with absolute fearlessness, their stun weapons firing blindly. The clone troopers held their ground in disciplined formations, their concentrated fire tearing the Wraith to pieces before they could close the distance. Worf fought like a demon, his bat'leth singing as he engaged a Wraith commander in close quarters, parrying a stun baton and cleaving through the alien's chest armor with brutal Klingon efficiency. Leading the charge were the Jedi. Anakin and Obi-Wan moved as a single fluid entity, their lightsabers humming. Blaster fire and stun bolts were deflected with effortless grace. When the Wraith attempted to engage them in hand-to-hand combat, they found that their regenerative flesh was utterly useless against plasma blades that burned at the heat of a star. Limbs were severed, and weapons were destroyed in blurs of blue light. As they breached the central cloning chamber, the psychic weight in the air became physically crushing. The Supreme Queen stood atop a massive, pulsing biological control dais, surrounded by her personal guard. She did not attack physically. Instead, she unleashed a telepathic scream, a wave of pure, concentrated malice and hunger intended to shatter the minds of the intruders and drop them to their knees. The clone troopers staggered, gripping their helmets. Worf snarled, fighting through the intense migraine. But the Jedi stepped forward. Obi-Wan raised a hand, projecting a massive wall of force energy, a serene shield of light that met the Queen's dark psychic assault. He anchored himself in the living force, refusing to yield to the hunger. Anakin, however, did not just defend. He felt the Queen's arrogance, her belief that all other life was merely food. Anakin tapped into his righteous fury, funneling the raw power of the Force through his mind and projecting it outward. The Queen gasped, her eyes widening in sudden, profound terror. She had tried to consume their minds, but she had bitten into a star. The telepathic backlash from Anakin's absolute will shattered her concentration. She stumbled backward, clutching her head. With the psychic suppression lifted, Rex and Worf opened fire, completely annihilating the Queen's royal guard. Anakin leapt across the chamber, his blue blade severing the control columns of the cloning apparatus, shutting down the massive ZPM power flow. The organic machinery began to wither and die instantly. Realizing her empire was crumbling, the Supreme Queen lunged at Obi-Wan, her hand outstretched, attempting to drain his life force directly. Obi-Wan didn't even ignite his lightsaber. He simply sidestepped her desperate attack and used a powerful force push to send her flying backward into the failing energy matrix of her own cloning vats. With the facility's power completely disabled and the Supreme Queen defeated, the clone engineers quickly planted thermal detonators and Starfleet antimatter charges on the primary structural supports. The strike team evacuated back to the gunships, lifting off just as the facility began to detonate. The explosions cascaded across the continent, wiping out the cloning vats and crippling the Wraith's ability to wage a sustained galactic war. In orbit, the remaining Hive ships, sensing the death of their queen and the destruction of their facility, broke formation and scattered into the deep void of space, completely disorganized and broken. The campaign in Pegasus did not end all Wraith presence in the galaxy, but it permanently shattered their unity and their numbers. They were reduced to scavengers, hiding in the dark corners of the galaxy, terrified of the day the ships with the blue lasers and the glowing red torpedoes would return. Months later, on a balcony overlooking the sparkling ocean of Lantea, Jean-Luc Picard and Obi-Wan Kenobi stood together, watching a Republic shuttle launch into the bright blue sky. The Stargate Alliance had solidified its presence. Earth, the Federation, and the Republic had proven that their combined strength could protect not just one galaxy, but two. They were strangers in this universe, permanently displaced from their own homes, but they had found a new, undeniable purpose. They were the guardians of a new era, proving that no matter the universe, the light of courage, discipline, and unity would always pierce the darkness.